This morning I'd like to speak about two Keynesian myths. A myth, by the way, is something that does not exist. One is the Phillips curve, and the second is the multiplier. Phillips curve, of course, is the alleged trade-off between inflation and unemployment, and the corollary proposition that the government must tailor fiscal and monetary policy to this trade-off. It's entirely based upon empirical evidence. A graduate school professor of mine used to enjoy calling the Phillips curve fact in search of a theory. I prefer Professor Rothbard's characterization. In the Free Market Reader recently, he calls it perhaps the greatest single most absurd error in modern economics. There are three reasons, categories of fallacies within the Phillips curve that I'd like to talk about. One, very briefly, is epistemology. And the second is just as a theory. And lastly, as an empirical observation. Epistemologically, of course, facts cannot give us economic knowledge. Facts do not search theory. Quite the opposite. Mises has told us that theory is necessary to give meaning to facts. This is true for two reasons. One is the fundamental axiom of economics that human action exists. It is from that foundation, which, by the way, is irrefutable because any attempt to refute it is, in fact, action. It is from that beginning point that a process of deduction, the praxeological procedure, can give us economic knowledge. We can deduce true implications from a true premise. These conclusions that we derive, furthermore, are universally true. They cannot be refuted by any kind of evidence. Would be attempt to refute it in an empirical fashion would be similar to trying to attempt to refute the proposition that a ball cannot be both red and non-red all over simultaneously by testing that out in different locations, seeing if that were true in Chicago, and whether it were true in 1950 as well as 1989. The second reason, in an epistemological sense, that facts cannot give us economic theory is that the facts that are created by human action are what Mises called complex. They are not statistical facts. The data that it forms inflation figures and unemployment numbers is formed in a complex, non-statistical fashion, and I'll talk about this in more detail later, but it's unsuitable information for empirical work. In fact, even the positivists recognize the truth in this epistemological procedure of praxeology. They teach in their classes daily